All right, thank you, and everyone. All right, thank you, and everyone, for joining the Internet of Value Foundation New York, episode 152. And I hope all of those who listen to this information in the future find it as valuable as I know I do every single day. The diverse amount of mindsets and perspectives and individuals, you guys that come in here and share information. I truly am thankful and looking forward to the conversation today. It's going to be a brief one. Going to try and keep it like a 45-minute or so conversation. I want to really go over a video I've already posted up top, and of course in the title I have the BIS, the quarterly report that has just been recently videotaped, released with some questions and answers from reporters across the world, and maybe I'd like to hear some other point of views from a macroeconomic standpoint based off of everything that's occurring right now. And if you guys have watched the video beforehand, I tried to post it about a half hour or so before the space started, just in case people would like to give it a watch. And welcome up, Vet. Welcome to the space, man. Feel free to jump in so I can finish making my tacos right now.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me up, Death Ranger, as per usual. Fantastic space and good topic. Um, I probably would love to hear from Ben if he knows, but because he's into economy and all the reports, uh, probably works there, I think, as far as I know. But yeah, I think that's an interesting report. I haven't looked into it, but BIS, of course, Bank of International Settlement. Would love to hear from anyone who is here to chime into conversation. Important report, right? We're gonna go into Q4, so yeah.
Hello, I have not read this. I have not seen this particular video, but I did. I have been seeing they've been coming out with like a lot of stuff, so I'll definitely need to watch this later and opine.
Yeah, so the most recent video is it's very interesting because just a month ago we had the Bank of International Settlements annual conference, right, and an annual report, and in this um, video. I could also go and get it if people would like to reference. It's about an hour long. If you look up on the Bank of International Settlements, it's a couple videos down. Um, the sentiment was soft landing, right? Looking outlooks are great, right? Things are proportional to what we would like to see from an inflationary standpoint to an economic um, recovery, right? From what had occurred in 19 and 20, and to hear the outlook in this one in particular, where there were multiple references to things that have come out in this last segment of time. Some of them being the jobs report, misinformation that had come from the White House. That was something that was POV. The fact that the Fed is now choosing to finally lower interest rates, beginning stage of a 12 to 18th month uh, recession or worse, stagflation, which is just something that is very typical. It's normal. It happens every single time rates have ever dropped in history. And um, the significance, though, that I think was really outlined well in this was not necessarily that being the largest factor of possible macroeconomic issues, but Japan, and what is Japan going to do in relation to the United States? So I thought that was a very interesting fact that they brought that up there. But yeah, feel free. Anybody else, Dazzling, welcome up, and Ben, welcome. Glad to have you up, man. If either of you guys would like to jump in and from your own point of view, you don't have to comment necessarily on the Bank of International Settlements, but we've had a couple things in just the last even 3 weeks, right? From a macroeconomic standpoint, and Fed getting ready to lower rates. So, and we're going to see this tomorrow. Of course, this is we're going to have a jam-packed day tomorrow as well, right? With the awesome revolutionary space that's coming from David Schwartz and Mayuka at RippleX, and the, the fact that the Fed's also dropping. We're probably going to announce the rates that'll be the first rate cuts that are going to happen. So it's going to be a information jam-packed day.
Go ahead, Dazzling. You go first.
Well, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is well. I'm
GM.
GM. I'm definitely no macro echo expert, that's for sure. But if interest rates are coming down, that's definitely going to be a welcome news for a lot of homeowners, I would imagine, because that'll probably ease a lot of the expenses for Americans, I guess. But I guess it kind of sucks if you got long-term deposits. But if you got long-term deposits in the bank, I don't know what you're doing, because we're trying to do DeFi over here in crypto. But yeah, I'll sit back, I'll listen, and if I can chime in, I definitely will.
Well, yeah, there's a lot to unpack with what you said, how you brought it into there. Japan, I don't have terribly too much time. Japan, something you need to be looking out for. China as well. Let's talk about Japan. So so a lot of people here probably are only in crypto, Twitter. Sometimes you'll see things like the BOJ, the Bank of Japan, and things that they're doing, and the yen carry trade. Does everybody know what the yen carry trade is? Thumbs up, thumbs down. That's the big elephant in the room, right? That's not very well explained, and that's causing problems. So very quickly, when it comes to rates, what's happening is that while most of the world has been raising their rates to combat inflation, Japan was doing the opposite. And the reason they were doing the opposite was because they were actually in a negative rate territory pre-COVID, pre all the inflation, which is exactly what it means. It's negative, meaning if you wanted to put your money into like Fed fund, rated, vehicles like overnight Fed fund options. So banks will put their excess cash into these things. Normally, you get you get interest on that. It's a place to put your cash, right? This is what banks use. This is what we use. In Japan, the rate situation was so opposite of what the rest of the world was doing. You would have to be charged to do that, meaning they were incentivizing you to use that money to increase growth because their economy wasn't doing great for a long time. So their interest rates, even though they raised them during COVID and during this time of inflation, it was still sitting around 0 to 1%, while the rest of us are sitting at 5%. Europe is even higher. Some places where they're experiencing hyperinflation were raising their rates 70%. It was really wild. So you've got all this going on, and what was happening. So what the yen carry trade is, which is what people are freaking out about now that the rates are going. I'm going to land this. It's complicated. I apologize. So what happens is people let's say I'm in America and I'm a trader. I'm borrowing money. I'm borrowing yen. Okay. This is like a year ago. I'm borrowing yen at a 1% interest rate. I'm converting my yen to US dollars because I'm in America. And then I'm investing that $1 billion in, what did I say? Billion into bonds and treasuries here, where I'm getting a 5% yield. It's the easiest, most profitable trade you'll ever do. It's very simple and whatnot. And that's all great and fine until the yields start to change. So while the rest of us are clamoring to lower our yields, lower our rates, right? Which has like Dazzling said, it doesn't directly change the mortgage rates, but it indirectly does, because it incentivizes banks to utilize to make more loans to do these kind of things. It increases competition with those banks. So whatever, we can just say it's not really true, but indirectly it does lower the rates. We just say that. Okay. So now we're doing this, and so is the rest of the world. And now I'm the trader, and I'm like, oh shit. Now I'm only getting 4% instead of 5%. This is getting a little hairy. And now Japan's raising their rates because their inflation is through the roof, because their inflation is ridiculous. They were at one point trading, I think, close to 200 yen per dollar, and it kept going up. So they started to intervene months and months ago, and it would temporarily try and get it as close to a 1-to-1 ratio as possible. Obviously, that's not possible, but they're trying to get as close to a 1-to-1 ratio of the US dollar to the yen. And it wasn't working. Every time they did it, it just went right back up because they weren't solving the problems of inflation. Rate changes don't solve the problems of inflation. Every time a rate is changed up or down, it is one of two things. It's a reactionary measure, which is not good. It means you fucked up in the past, and now you're reacting to your fuck up, which usually doesn't work because there's no magic switch. Or the opposite, which is what we're going to see this week, which is a preemptive move to try and change what is the wheels are already in motion of really bad things to happen. And we've got to lower those rates now so that in a year, when the shit hits the fan, we're in a better place to manipulate those rates to what we need them to be manipulated to. Now, there's a lot of argument that's going to say, right, so two things. Let me end the yen carry trade. Why is this a problem for me? So Japan just raised the rates now. These are floating rates. These are rates that are going to change on me. These are not fixed rates. So now I'm borrowing money to keep my trade going at 2% interest, and I'm getting 4%. And I'm barely making it. You're going to get to a point, and it doesn't have to be 1-to-1, but you can get dangerous close where all of a sudden now I'm going to have to sell my bonds. I'm going to have to dump my bonds to pay the yen that I owe and just get the hell out of this trade because it's not profitable for me for anymore. The estimates of how much is actually in the yen carry trade is anywhere between $7 to $20 trillion. We don't really know. We don't really know how much money it is. So if you're dumping treasuries, you're dumping all of this, it could be a serious problem, obviously, economically, but that's not really the big concern. The biggest concern is how, sorry, I'm just like trying to scroll something, getting a call. It's how we're going to be moving forward with this, right? So like I said before, we are bracing for, they are still trying to do a soft landing. And I think there's a chance of that happening. The people in power have to stay in power. They've got to ride this out, and it's going to be pretty bumpy, and it's not going to be a great economic situation for most of us. But it is possible that they could do a softish landing, right? If we try and pull the rug and try and change and pivot from what we've been doing for 3 years, it's almost certain that it'll be a hard landing. We will see this week where we're going to go, right? So the last thing I'll say, and then I probably should jump down a little bit, but I can answer any questions if anybody has any, or if you just want to say hi, everybody. If we do, so right now on the table is a 0.25% rate cut in the US and a 0.5. So that's 50 basis points versus 25 basis points, 0.25% or 0.5%. What most of us are feeling right now in the world is that a 0.25% is already built into the market. So you're going to do this 0.25% in hopes that it's going to spur some economic interest. Okay, the rates are lowering. It's getting a little bit, we beat inflation. This is going to be a bullish sentiment, right? But 0.25%, most of us in the inside are feeling it's not enough because we've already thought that it was going to be 0.25% months and months ago when they should have started cutting, right? So that's already built in. So if they do 0.25%, it's not going to change the market at all. In fact, they might look at it badly. If you look at, so the adverse of that, right, is a 50 basis point, 0.5%, double that amount. That might be an indication of, they're cutting really hard now because they know how bad it's going to be in the future. Also a bearish sentiment. So there's many of us that think that regardless of what the cut is going to be, it's not going to be good enough, right? There's nothing that we can do right now. There's nothing the Fed can do right now to change the situation right now. We have to look in arrears at the data, which is constantly getting revised, like you just said. Death Ranger, you talked about 818,000 jobs, almost 1 million jobs revised. The rumor is that the next revision is going to be a lot of them to anywhere between a total of 1.5 to 2 million jobs that were incorrectly assessed, that the market was making trades for a year on job data that was off by almost 2 million jobs. Okay, that is very unusual. It's really crazy. So if that is the case, they are clearly looking forward now. They know that when they start to intervene with quantitative easing, and by the way, they have been doing quantitative easing, just not in the form of rate cuts. But when we look historically at rate cuts, this is the last thing, and I'll let you guys chatter, was when it's a 12 to 18 month typically is when the recession sits in. And that's not by coincidence, it's by design. Because when you do these cuts and you do this, it sets in a series of events that are going to happen, that are going to trickle through the systems, that is going to lead us to that. Now, is it chicken or the egg? It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that that's what they believe. This is their policy. This is their focus. This is what they're going to be doing. What we really need to see here at this point now is how much are they going to commit to it, and what are we going to do? I believe that we are very likely to see 1.25% rate cuts before January 1st. There's 3 meetings left. They can always have an emergency meeting in October. But in September, November, and December, I believe we're going to have a 25 to 50% or 25 to 50 basis point. But in the next 3 months, totaling, I believe, 1.25% cut. That's very significant. That's very aggressive. And it would be an indication that things are going to get really, really bad in 12 to 18 months. And that's where we need to see that. And I haven't seen any of this BIS thing, so I'm not really sure how they're opining. I've been watching some other stuff that they've been coming out. They've been putting out some bangers this week, and I just don't have time because I'm so wrapped up with my day stuff. And then obviously this has been a week I've been waiting for probably, at least since April, right? I was very confident that we could hear as early as April that we're going to do that. I knew that in May, there were already rumors that they were compiling job reports and they were off by a lot. So I assumed that they would be much more proactive than they are, whether it's a political reason that they're doing this in hopes of spurring the economy right before the election. I mean, you can decide that on your own. I don't know these fucking people. I have no idea what their motives are, but I think it's very, very clear that, we are going to see what we're going to get. And we have really, really good historical data to know what happens next. We just have to wait and see what the rate is going to be and then how the market reacts. And then from there, it should be very easy for myself and other people to kind of predict exactly where we're going to be going. But 2026 does not look very good. And if we do cut at the rate that I think we're going to cut, then the Federal Reserve would agree.
I really appreciate you for coming up, Ben, and for all that information you shared. I mean, that was really, I couldn't have said anything better. So I thank you, man. And Dazzling, you got your hand up, so please feel free to jump in.
All I really wanted to say is, I guess, summarize it, but kind of in a question, I guess. It basically sounds like we're in a really bad situation, but they're probably going to attempt to kind of sweep it under the rug for just a little bit longer, which probably makes sense because you've got an election coming up. It's like, hey guys, let's make everyone feel good, and don't worry about that problem over there. We've got an election to worry about. We need your votes, kind of thing. And then after the election, whoever gets in, it's kind of like, well, then you can worry about the problem. It doesn't sound very good. Pretty disingenuous, actually.
Well, that's
it's not great.
No. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I just to comment on that. Yeah, outside, of course, of what the rate cuts actually are going to be, the second most important thing Dazzling brings up that really good point is what direction, the Fed what direction just the government in general is going to be going and how the markets are going to do that. I believe markets will react differently to either a Kamala or a Donald Trump president. They're going to react differently, and so will the Fed Reserve. And that's just something that, despite, people obviously wishful thinking for one way or the other, we don't know yet exactly what that's going to be. We don't know how long that's going to take to get itself resolved. It took a long time in 2020. It's going to take a long time this time. And these are very precious moments that we have here. I'm not trying to say it's too little too late, but it's very likely that if we were to have a soft landing, it would have needed to start a long time ago. I don't really see the best path, I guess, would be the Dems stay in power. They give the confidence to Powell, and then it's a very long, shitty process that we kind of land this plane and somewhere find it in there. I don't necessarily think that that is what's going to happen. I think that the markets themselves are going to kind of come alive, because I am expecting a blow off top in all the markets before then. It's going to start very soon. It's going to be a very violent thrust upwards, and you're not going to see a lot of narratives. So people aren't going to really know how to respond. Some people are going to FOMO in, and when I mean markets, I'm talking much more broad than just the hyper risk markets like crypto and things like that. But I'm talking about all these markets completely. And when that happens, the market sentiment of how these rate cuts will be perceived is going to kind of get thrown out of the window. But we know that the more violent the blow off top, the faster it's going to come down. So we're going to be inundated with all this other information regarding these markets going up and down, and people are going to be making all this money or losing their shirts. Shorts are going to get washed out, and then the longs will too. And it's just going to be a real bloodbath that's going to lead to a very euphoric, very positive looking 2025. And that's when I believe a collapse is going to come down towards the 2026. That'll be anywhere between the Great Recession of 2008 and the Great Depression of 1929.
Yes, and it's so interesting that you say that at the end there, Ben, because just to what you had said, Dazzling. Not to say that there is anything that's good or bad, of course, that just being personal perspective on the situation or the action itself, but in every light there is light, or in every situation there is an ability to, just like how Ben had said right earlier, for a series of individuals, always in typical formations, the lower percentage of what we would consider to be the larger population, that position themselves to be the benefactors of that particular situation. And so, that's one of the reasons why we talk about this stuff on these spaces in particular, right? So that us as a group and a community, the individuals on X in particular, which are by themselves a particular breed, we can position ourselves to have the most beneficial and efficient outcome, knowing the knowledge in which the action of what will occur is going to occur. And so, no better position to be in other than knowing the position to be in.
Thanks, guys. I got to go jump on a work call. If you guys are still up, you probably won't be. But yeah, we can always revisit this another time. My DMs are always open, or just tweet it and I'll include everybody else who got questions. All right. Bye. Have fun.
Appreciate you, Ben.
Thanks for coming, Ben.
And so, that being said, from an economic macro outlook, I mean, anybody in the space that wants to come up, give your own opinion, of course, on if you guys have gotten a chance to watch the video or read any of the posts that I've been able to post up top, or just your own opinion on your personal macroeconomic point of view for the moment, and do comparisons to different situations that are possible to occur. But if not, I'm going to rotate over to we were about 11 minutes into the video. Of course, it's the first post I have up top, the BIS quarterly review report. There's a mention of one of the new factorizations that they're taking into consideration when performing their projects, the tests that have been going on from a cross-border payments situation point of view, or transfer of value, which is I really like that terminology, because when you change it from exchanging money for money and you turn it to value, the real question then is, what form of value are you exchanging for another form of value? And so the word atomic swaps was not mentioned, but the inference of actions, the explanation of a user being able to from a bank's point of view, do cross-border exchange or interbank exchange, whether it be to different interbanks in say a country, for any form of value, stocks, commodities, whatever it may be in a digital format, to have the ability to be exchanged for would be another currency or another form of value. And so read about 11 minutes in the video if anybody wants to go, fast forward to that particular exchange. I thought that was from, of course, what we talk about in the distributed ledger technology space, and from what we've seen from all of the projects and tests that have come out of the BIS, which is its magnitude of tests. I mean, they've done over 100 different projects, and probably 15 that just come up to the top of my mind. Agora being the most recent one that I've spoken about, which was a large test that had to do with the New York State Fed and the Bank of England, and a couple other very large institutions out there. With, of course, being um, sorry, my brain had a brain fart there. Being the bank of the country. That being said, the the acknowledgement that this particular type of thought is going into the next stage of these cross-border exchanges. I think it's really interesting. It's of course what my own point of view, what I'd like to see, and I think from anyone's point of view, when you think about banking the unbanked, and being able to have instant exchange of any sort of value for any sort of value internationally. I mean you know, that is truly having a connected global society, and one thing that I think digitization is truly going to offer. Of course, we start talking about RWA, real world assets, which I think is the next big identifier in the distributed ledger technology space. Of course, it's been the whole thing about 2024 has been about real world asset tokenization, digitization, and so it's really awesome to see. Dazzling, you got your hand up though, man. Please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so you mentioned about people transferring I guess their value into other assets. I guess at this point in time, if this, where we are at with digital assets, what does that present for people looking to pivot from the assets, the traditional assets that they hold currently? Is that why kind of Ben was suggesting that you could see a significant uptick? I guess he didn't say specifically in crypto assets, but could you see that run towards crypto assets because of the instability of traditional assets? I mean, it's very interesting. I hope you guys were listening to the Trump interview with Farak. And it seems like they were really priming the American people, or the world, I guess, because in a very base way, to begin the conversation about crypto on the wider scale. So is it, I guess, is that a way where people would kind of move to?
I'll answer that two different ways, because of course in every situation there could be multiple things that could occur, right? I mean, who could really plan for the future of the exact action that would be the occurrence? I mean, it's all about probabilities, right? Now, when you think about something like the stock market, and the majority of where value lies your trusts and um, your pensions and your state funds and all the money that's tied up into the stock market, right? Um, and in this moment of market crash, it really depends on, I think, exactly how it occurs. If currency or one country's currency, like the United States dollar, because of whatever happens with Japan, possibly trying to sell their bonds, and because they're not able to sell the bonds because of difficulty. Um, maybe the price of them lowers if they were trying to buy commodities, right? Instead, um, the question then also becomes from a stock market point of view. Well, so what companies then go under, right? I mean, does everybody just sell their stocks and walks away and tries to put it into gold? Where does the money go? Does it go into crypto digital assets? It's really not the easiest thing to flow into digital assets, right? I mean, today the way that exchanges are built, I mean, they just shut down if they have too many users at once anyway. So, you know, I think it's really interesting because I think it consolidates, right? I think there's a lot of companies that exist in the stock market today where there's a lot of value that is essentially just a shell. And when that value ceases to exist, there's a huge consolidation effort. And so, maybe there's a lot less companies that exist in the stock market because they hold the entire market share of what was there previously, something like a Nvidia. And because of this, there's also an influx. This is what Ben was speaking about before, right? There was an influx into this, and so those who participated in this event, right, had this very large increase in value because everybody wanted to get into it. And so as everybody got into it, everyone paid what they thought the evaluation would be as a fair market value, right? Um, there's a ton of things. Do people go to gold, right? Well, there's only a certain amount of gold out there, right? And so what does the price of gold go to then? It's the same kind of um, um, supply and demand, right? So the this it's a multi-pronged kind of possibility of probabilities that could occur. I think, though, that with that being said, if there was a large flush out of the stock market and a consolidation, I still do think a lot of that actually excess flows, and it might even excess flow into things like ETFs, right? And so, well, if there's an excess people that are going into ETFs, then those providers need to purchase more of the assets that exist inside of that ETF to, of course, offset that demand. Now, if they do that OTC, well, obviously we know OTC doesn't really affect markets. It's as simple as me exchanging with you directly, right? So it doesn't exchange. It doesn't have anything to do with a price exchange. So we don't see any market conditions change if that's the case. If it's a large amount, a large influx, large amount, well, they're most likely going to be forced to do open market purchases. And so, it's multi-pronged kind of thing. Of course, none of this is investment advice, and it's kind of just a thought on from a macroeconomic point of view, from a retail standpoint, and from a small business standpoint. What action do you take to make it so that you're going to be able to supply food for your family and go home and turn the lights on and have the daycare and have some running water? I mean, that's what it really would comes down to in the end of the day, and people are you know are willing to do whatever they feel it takes to get into that position.
I'm bullish on gold right now. It actually looks pretty good. It looks like it's going to go a little bit more. But yeah, no, I just posed the question because I'm looking for a bullish use case for crypto, right? I guess we all are.
Well, I'm not the hugest fan of the word crypto, but distributed ledger technology in and itself, I think, just how I had mentioned before, the ability to exchange value for value, whatever that asset may be, whether it be a currency or a commodity, um, a security, for that ability to you as a user have the atomic swap, whether it be an atomic swap or not. And so this is one of the mentions, So the swap essentially would become a liability of settlement for the provider, which would be a bank in this instance. And so, the fact that they're working on this now, this thought that we could have these banking relations that could be existing on possibly like a unified ledger, which would allow an atomic swap of two different banks that didn't even need to have corresponding conditions or communications with each other. They're following the protocols um, standards. The the possibilities. I mean, this is all about connecting our entire species from a value standpoint.
When that was an interesting point you just said there, and I know we want to get 808's perspective here as well, but yeah, you did say, or you've always said, DLT, other than crypto or blockchain, and when we started going around Wave of Innovation and talking to a lot of folks about the event, a lot of people didn't really understand. Like you would say crypto, and sometimes you kind of scare people away, especially very business professionals. They're kind of crypto, I don't know. But then you say DLT, and you spark their interest, right? And I took that from you, man, and it actually worked a lot. They kind of go, "What's DLT?" And they start to question it a little bit more, and so definitely the language fits in different settings, right? It depends who you're talking to, I guess. But yeah.
They're not three letters that normally fit together anywhere, right? You question it. Acronym. You know it's an acronym. Your brain says acronym. What? I want to know. I need to know what acronym that is. And so crypto is actually a disease. If you look it up online, and you type in just crypto, usually the first thing that'll pop up on Wikipedia is the disease crypto, which is actually pretty nasty. It's some gastrointestinal disease, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously the word came from cryptography, but yeah.
I'm riddled with the disease there, man. I hope there's a cure.
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting for those of us who have longevity in the space already. 808 though, man, you have come up and haven't spoken yet. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I know you are one who actually looks into a lot of things that BIS says. So, maybe your thoughts on if you got to see this most recent video or read the quarterly report.
I haven't read the quarterly report. And to tell you the truth, I really don't have much on my mind about this except for a lot of the things that has been said before are being shown recently with how the importance of interoperability don't matter what walls you are behind, but there will be structure for these walls to be able to interoperate with each other regardless, which has always been blown my mind from even the earlier days to even how these entities will be able to sign transactions without revealing too much of their anonymity, which is something that always comes up that people really talk about. Like I just shared recently with the BIS project's Turbillion, which highlights David Chaum's 1982 patent that was to do with blind signatures and cryptographic hashes. With a whole bunch of other ones has resurfaced like a project called Surety that was created in like 1995 that created hashes for certain things. It's just interesting to see a lot of these things come about within some of these papers we read through the BIS and understanding how a lot of their roles plays with the macroeconomics of things can also help us better understand the ebbs and flows of this multifaceted volatile market we are in, regardless if it's stocks, bonds, derivatives, fucking sorry for my language, crypto, even the different intricacies between the different assets within the crypto space. Because let's be real, this space is a new market class within its own workings with different ebbs and flows itself. There's newer things that we have to incorporate to kind of understand how the market are affected by things of this nature of how the underlying network works. We got proof of work, we got proof of stake, we got hybrid technology between. We got some that you don't even need to hold a stake in the network. So you have a lot of these things that affects each other, even on a macroeconomics level, from gold, how you would view people from how they would be more comfortable putting their value in. And that even goes to a more in-depth analysis of demographics of groups, age groups, not just within age groups, a lot of the things that they like, which now we have technology that can process a lot of this information quite easily if applied correctly. So there's a lot of tools out there that we can leverage to kind of help mitigate a lot of the risk and kind of help position us to be better in to kind of position ourselves to be better at grasping some of these opportunities, which is always there, but it's our own individual ability to be aware of them, to be able to grasp them, and that's being able to understand a lot of these things that we are not normally understanding of, especially when we coming into this space, especially crypto, man. When you come into blockchain, cryptography, distributed ledger technology space, there's so much forward thinking, so much new technology, so much evolving, and such. All of these things, even in the XRP, look how much has evolved since 2020 or since 2 years ago. To other networks coming along, hybrid, interop. But one thing always rings true from even the early days was interoperability between multiple different systems, which there's multiple different ways of these systems communicating to each other, which is how I always say that's one of the focal points that should be always rings true within all of us, because even down to us and our own individual lives. We are interconnected to all of the things around us, from natural elements, natural phenomena, me, you, and all of us, each other on this stage, and even the ones listening. We are being connected through um, technology, just like how cryptography and crypto and these different tokens are connected through their networks and ways. By understanding how these connections are dealt, and we can better understand how we can move our value and where we can move it safely and control it, other than how it is has always been done traditionally, which we never usually had that full control. But just because we have that control doesn't mean we should um, take control over it if we don't have that good foundational knowledge to kind of help us guide ourselves in a morally correct manner. You know what I mean? Like, it is really up to ourselves to level up our own understanding of the things we don't know to better ourselves. But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff to see with how the podcast coming out. Good stuff to see with we're seeing more mainstream talks about it. But we gotta be careful with this because this ain't anything new. With having presidents talk about crypto, having their sons come in talk about stuff like this. We had some examples that happened 4 or 5 years ago, even with the other elections, same thing around happening again. So even then, even though there's good positive things coming out of it, there's still yet things that we need to be aware of and always check ourselves, to make sure we always stay grounded in reality, and not stuck in a dilemma, in a trifecta dilemma. It's crazy, but yeah.
Always appreciate you for coming up, man. Aloha, and I hope you're having an awesome day today, anyway. Dazzling. Go ahead, man. Jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, anyway, I think it's kind of unfair that, you guys kind of, so isolated out there in the middle of the ocean, being tied to the US. I mean, you have, a significant, kind of downturn or uptick or anything that goes on with macroeconomics, how that might affect you guys on those islands over there, which I think is extremely unfair, considering that you guys are so detached from the mainland, and how all that how would all that affect you guys? And could you guys basically detach from all that and become self-sufficient in yourself?
So what's crazy is I actually shared something a few days ago. One of our foundations is actually one of the used to be one of the biggest, used to actually rival Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation back in the days as one of the biggest foundations in the US. Also, and that's only within the treasuries within the US. That's not treasuries outside of the borders, which they always have been trying to get a hold of. What sucks because that foundation was meant to reinvigorate and revitalize our, not our monarchy, but our identity as people, as a culture, as Polynesian, as Kanaka. But that foundation got over corrupted in a sense for a very long time, where a lot of that funds kind of diminished to be able to kind of help our people, which it affected in a macroeconomics way, which I believe was a part of the plan for a very long time, especially with land control. And like you said, the isolation of Hawaii is a prime place that also controls supply chains throughout history. Even in the ancient history, where salt used to rival the price of gold and actually was more expensive than gold, Hawaii was one of the biggest manufacturers of salt, and also sandalwood trade, which gave us connection to different parts of the world, not just the Americas, the Asiatic countries to Russia. We garnered treaties with them, trade treaties that spanned over 200 years, which we still have connection with those treaties till to this day. Um, Before the overthrow happened. And then when the overthrow happened, that kind of changed our whole economic backgrounds and our effect when controls of different financial products that still today to this day that we have no control over except for the Kamehameha Schools Bishop Estates Foundation, which was created by our late queen, our Princess Pauahi, who married a bishop who kind of corrupted that system. Well, yeah, there's a lot of historical backings that need to be stripped back to kind of share the effect of the U.S. Economics towards Hawaii, because it's really like how you said, it's the mainland that ultimately affected Hawaii and its macroeconomics on a huge scale that is not even looked at to today. And now Hawaii is the gateway to all these Polynesian islands like Palau, the French Polynesian islands. A lot of these other places within Polynesia that makes up Polynesia as a whole, but not just Polynesia. You got Melanesia, Micronesia, that's within all this triangle that is a very big country, a big place if you really look at it. Um, like the ocean is massive, but we don't believe the ocean separates us. It's what connects us. This is why we are able to navigate using the stars and things as such very profoundly. Which is even more crazy when you look at it at that level because you have supply chain management that connected all of these countries from even ancient times to the 1800s before even the overthrow. And that's a very long time to be able to do that and have there's factual facts about that from Russia, Chinese history, Japan, down to Australia, even to Australia and the Aboriginals, connections that date back over thousands of years, which is even wild to even think that. Down to even South America, like everywhere, it's crazy. But the control of the supply chain management and routes was a big, profound thing that when the U.S. overthrew Hawaii during the Spanish War, after they also enacted the Jones Act of 19 something, I forget what it was, but that really affected it, and then they took control over a lot of that chain, which is something very interesting when you kind of look at macroeconomics and the effects of it, because yeah, like it's always interesting. Sorry, I'm still rambling, but I gotta go. Hello, everybody.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for coming up, 808. And right at the end of it, I mean, we went. Actually, I meant to do only like a 45-minute space, so I went over already by a couple of minutes. It's been a great conversation, um, and I couldn't agree more, 808, about the unfortunateness that has occurred over what we have historical wise text. just for positioning in context to trade routes and this effort of globalization that we've had occur already, and of course still an effort of globalization occurring because we're not fully connected as a unitary um, value system. And
What I should have pointed out is how it happened, how it was solidified. That the process of how it happened and how it was solidified is a process that had happened throughout history, using war to solidify a takeover over a country, over a place, over an area, creating problems and then establishing foundations in the hopes of creating more ways to funnel money through. These things happen so much, so in depth. I'm big, but yeah, it is crazy. But we see these things happen on multiple levels. But yeah, sorry, Beth. Hello, everybody. You guys have an awesome day.
you too, man. And for anybody who didn't get a chance, I posted a video all the way up top. It's the BIS. It's the first post BIS quarterly the review report. We went over it today in the space, and of course this is my own opinion, and I couldn't echo this more. In times of hardship, the most important thing that I could think that we could do for ourselves is have at least 2 months worth of food and water available to you and your family. And with that being said, everyone, well, we're going to have a great revolutionary community space tomorrow with David Schwartz and Mayuka, as well as we're going to also see the Fed announce the first round of rates that are going to be dropped. So it's going to be a jam-packed day and week. And so love everyone. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day and night. And we'll see everyone next week, Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So love you guys. Night, everybody.